everyone. For the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about the Sermon on the Mount. We've talked about the Beatitudes and how those that are blessed in the kingdom of God are the downcast, the meek, and the merciful. We've talked about how we are called to be more righteous than the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And the ways in which we do that is to look inside ourselves, at our hearts and our thoughts, and how those affect our relationship with God and others. Last week we covered how Jesus tells us that our relationship with God is not something that is to be shown off to everyone so they can see how righteous we are, but to be humble. Today we're going to continue on with Jesus' sermon and see how we can continue to follow Jesus in the midst of a world that is often pulling us in other directions.
Okay, this is Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 12. Do you judge so that you may not be judged? For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how do you say to your neighbor, let me take the speck out of your eye, when the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will be able to see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them underfoot and turn and maul you.
Judgment. It's something we all experience, whether we're the ones doing the judging or the one being judged. Jesus teaches that we shouldn't worry about what others do or don't do. Instead, we should make sure that what we are doing is right, that we're living in a way that deepens our relationship with God. Jesus shows that we often make a big deal about other people's faults. Meanwhile, we often overlook our own faults. He says it's like trying to get a little speck of dust out of our friend's eye, while the whole time we have a huge stick in our own eye. What a hypocrite! The Pharisees at the time were doing just that. They were quick to see the sins of others, but were blind and unwilling to hold themselves accountable to the same standards they were imposing on everyone else. Notice that Jesus says the hypocrites will be the one with the bigger problem. Why? Because their sin was not merely comparable to a speck of dust, it was more like a wooden plank, and that's quite a big difference. And they refused to take it out. I can imagine that when Jesus was speaking these words, he looked right at the Pharisees. What if you or I were there? Would Jesus have looked at you too? How often do we call someone out for doing something wrong? Maybe you tell a friend or a coworker not to gossip, but as soon as you get home, you call up your bestie to give them all the details. Pretty hypocritical, huh? I think we all know it can be easy to look at others and point out the things that they are doing wrong, but it's often hard to look at ourselves and do the same thing. It's easy to spot someone else when they're being selfish, proud, mean, unforgiving, or dishonest. It's harder to notice when we're acting that way. Jesus tells us that we should take care of our own problems and faults before we tell others how to fix theirs. Followers of Jesus are called to live differently, and Jesus is explaining what that looks like in a very practical sense. His words about judgment are reflecting what it means to love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself.